Because the clean masters in the above city have started to think the effects of Pandora have faded. They are eyeing our tunnels again, making cleaning plans again. I'm here because I wanted to remind them of something. This is a show of strength. I still smell of rust, and I am still very close to the button that can shut off their power. This isn't just a podcast, Joe. This is a memory-refreshing session.
Friends, today I am sinking deep into my seat in the studio because I am facing a giant, the man who rules that dark labyrinth they call the underworld, the #1 name on the government's target for termination list. Ares, I'll be honest, seeing those heavily armed guards of yours outside, I did consider for a moment if we should just cancel the broadcast. What is all this preparation for?
Relax, Joe. Those outside aren't there to cause harm. They are there to protect us. They are my family. But to answer your question, it's just a precaution. As far as we are concerned, the war is over, and we won. I'm just waiting for the above world to officially admit it.
He's not joking, folks. But Ares, your story began as the golden boy of that glittering army. You led the most elite units. Ranks sparkled on your shoulders. Now I look at you. Your armor is peeling. You're covered in rust. To transform from a general into such a feared leader of the underground, this can't just be a story of desertion. What happened? What pushed you from that pristine white barracks into this dusty underworld?
Ranks, Joe. They are just decorated scraps of tin that show how well you obey your masters. I am Ares. I was the invisible hand that handled the army's dirty work. I cleaned up the messes. But one day my glittering masters decided to view the entire underworld as a mess. So instead of cleaning, I chose to wrap that hand around their throats.
So that famous desertion was actually the first step of a rebellion. When you descended to the underworld, did they welcome you as a savior? After all, you were once the executioner from above.
They hated me at first, Joe, and they were right to. But I didn't give them bread. I gave them the truth. I showed them the evidence of how the above world viewed us as nothing more than a raw material warehouse. Don't let the peeling paint on this armor fool you. This rust is the badge of my freedom. That night when the above world released that virus upon us, our souls were melting along with our metal. But I didn't break.
That's the part. The rust plague everyone whispers about. That nightmare where thousands of robots turned to dust in a single night. Ares, let's start there. What did you feel when you saw the first speck of rust in those tunnels that night?
It all started on a Wednesday night, Joe. While champagne was being popped in the glittering streets of the above city, a silent, odorless mist seeped through the ventilation tunnels of the underworld. At first, those below didn't even notice. Why would anyone care about a bit of mist? But then the first screams began.
Wait a second. Mist? I always thought it was a chemical attack. But what you're describing sounds more like something digital?
It wasn't chemical, Joe. That mist was a swarm of billions of eaters, nanobots. They could smell the metal. They started with the oldest robots first. Imagine a transport robot walking down the street, suddenly collapsing to its knees, its joints turning into a rust-colored powder. While people watched in horror, that heap of metal turned into a sand dune in seconds. Robots were melting alive, Joe. Not like cancer in flesh, but like a curse in steel.
That's horrific. That sounds worse than an army showing up and opening fire. There's nowhere to run, no bullets to dodge, just death floating in the air. What about you? You were still in the army then. What were you told?
They told us, We are preparing the malfunctioning units in the underworld for recycling. Can you believe that? They labeled tens of thousands of lives as recycling. When I entered the tunnels that night, half the soldiers under my command were already starting to rust. Their weapons were melting in their hands. That was the moment I realized the above world wasn't just purging the underworld, but every piece of old tech that was no longer useful. Even their own men.
So they sacrificed you too. They sent you into that dust on purpose?
This peeling paint is a souvenir of that night. My armor was an old generation heavy alloy, so the nanobots couldn't bite through me immediately. But I will never forget those human screams in the tunnels, that screeching metal sound coming from the robot's joints. Have you ever heard a robot cry, Joe? That high-pitched sound metal makes as it snaps. That sound was coming from every corner of Below City that night. And then the infamous radio command came. Do not retreat. Stay inside until the operation is complete.
You were literally left to die. But you didn't stop, did you? You did something in Below City that night. You started a resistance.
I didn't retreat, Joe. But I didn't die the way the above wanted me to either. I turned my barrel toward those brainwashed lieutenants standing next to me, still waiting for orders. That night, in those dark, narrow corridors of the underworld, we tore each other apart. As bullets floated through the rusty air, I made a vow. If I made it out of those tunnels that night, I would drown those glittering towers in this very rust.
Incredible. You literally started a war against your own army, all by yourself. But Ares, no matter how strong you are, you can't stop those invisible eaters with fists or bullets. The underworld was melting. You were melting. How did the story change? Was there a miracle?
Forget miracles, Joe. Machines rely on calculations. While I was struggling with the rust in those tunnels, I ran into someone. Mina. An engineer who had fled from one of the above world's sterile labs with a data drive in her hand. She was the best of the team that wrote the rust virus, but when she saw what the monster she created was doing down here, her conscience outweighed her circuits.
The woman who made the virus came to you to stop it? Isn't that like bringing gunpowder to a fire? You could have attacked her right there.
My hand was at her throat, Joe. I had her pinned against the wall while my armor was rusting. But I stopped when she told me, I have an antidote. Its name is Pandora. The code on that drive could stop the nanobots. It didn't just neutralize them, it could make them self-destruct. But there was a problem. A massive problem.
What was the problem? Load the code and be done with it. Why did you wait?
For that code to activate, it needed a massive energy surge and a bait. We had to lure the nanobots to a center. Mina's plan was this. We would infiltrate the above world's main power grid and pump the virus back into their systems. However, when that happened, all the civilian systems in the above, hospitals, transportation networks, the heating systems of homes where children slept, they would all be used as bait and collapse permanently.
Wait, you mean to save your own people, you were going to condemn thousands of innocent people above, civilians who knew nothing, to darkness and death?
Exactly, Joe. Mina was crying, saying, "There's no other way. Either the below turns entirely to dust, or the above pays this price." I saw my own people dying and melting on one side, and on the other, those above who were sleeping in luxury, guilty of nothing. Everything I was taught as a general told me to choose the expendable. But this time, the expendable was an entire city.
Friends, this choice, imagine you have a button. You either watch your own brothers vanish, or you darken the lives of thousands of innocents you've never met. Please share your thoughts with us. Aries, what did you think at that moment? Wouldn't pressing that button make you exactly like the generals you hated?
That night I realized, Joe, that justice is not always distributed with clean hands. Sometimes, to save someone, you have to dip your hands into the deepest blood and rust. I looked at Mina and said only 2 words. Upload it.
You said, upload it? Aries, that means knowingly throwing thousands of people into the fire. What happened in those tunnels? How did the world change when that button was pressed?
The world split in 2, Joe. The moment Mina's fingers moved across the keyboard, every generator in the underworld went silent at once. There was a silence. You know that hum before a storm? Exactly like that. Then we saw the massive data cables reaching down from the above city explode in a shower of sparks. Pandora was set free.
And the rust virus? What did the nanobot swarm do?
The hunters became the hunted. The code reversed the hunger command within the virus. The nanobots abandoned the robots in the underworld and climbed toward the strongest signal, the main power grid of the above city, like a massive storm. The sky was suddenly covered in a gray cloud. As the below was plunged into darkness, those glittering skyscrapers above began to go dark, one by one. Hospital lights failed. Flying vehicles began to rain down from the sky like stones onto the underworld.
My God, that's not a salvation. That's an apocalypse. The people above lost everything before they even understood what was happening. Aries, as those vehicles were falling, as the screams of the innocent echoed through the tunnels, did you never want to say, stop?
Want to? Joe, molten metal was still dripping from inside my armor. I was hearing the final system pings of my friends dying in my arms. Stopping was not an option. Everything the above world called perfect collapsed. Their pristine, porcelain-white streets were filled with the brown rust rising from our sewers. For the first time, the scent of burnt cables and decaying metal seeped into the city's sterile air.
So you literally drowned the above world in its own filth. But it couldn't have ended with just systems crashing. The army must have intervened.
They came. The Shadow Battalion plunged into the chaos with their heaviest weapons. But they weren't facing fleeing refugees anymore. They were facing a general with rusted armor but fresh rage, and thousands of scraps who had nothing left to lose. It wasn't a street fight that night, Joe. It was a slaughter. While their high-tech weapons exploded in their hands because of the rust, we tore them apart with our bare hydraulic arms. Beneath the glittering towers, we, the ones they called trash, buried those who dug their own graves.
So that night, you didn't just stop the virus. You blew up every bridge with the above world at the cost of thousands of lives. Did you fight in those narrow tunnels yourself?
I didn't run, Joe. I waited in Tunnel 14. They came with their latest generation laser rifles and polished armor. Facing them was an old model with rusted, creaking joints and peeling paint. But in that tunnel, lasers had no power. The thick rust dust floating in the air had blinded their sensors. But I knew the darkness of that tunnel. I had memorized the scent of the rust.
So you hunted them in your own backyard?
Being old gen has an advantage. We were built for physical strength. I remember grabbing the first lieutenant by the throat and feeling the thin porcelain layer of his armor shatter into dust in my hand. While they were wasting bullets, I smashed them against the walls. The rust had already seeped into their joints. Their movements slowed. Their hydraulics began to stutter. When one of them fell, I leaned over him and tapped on the glass of his glittering helmet with my dirty, rusted hand. "You thought you could melt us," I said, "but we only became sharper."
One person against an entire unit? That's not a fight, that's a hunt.
The walls of Tunnel 14 were washed with the expensive hydraulic fluids of the above city, Joe. I showed no mercy to their last remaining commander. I left him in the middle of that dark tunnel so that when he returned above, he could explain what had woken up in the underworld. That day they understood. We were no longer their obedient robots. We were monsters, born of rust.
Ares, what you've told me is blood-curdling. The above world was plunged into darkness that night, I understand. But what about the underworld? Did the Pandora code fix everything? Is the virus completely gone?
Not completely, Joe. No wound heals without a scar. The code broke the nanobots' invasion protocol, but thousands of them are still sleeping in the depths of the underworld, inside the walls, in the rusty pipes. They just aren't organized anymore. Our way of life has changed. Now every morning we wake up and check our armor. Rust is now a part of us.
And the above world? The deaths of all those civilians, the collapse of the systems, they should have brought the whole world down on you to hunt you. How is it that you're here, doing a podcast with me right now?
Because I offered them a deal they couldn't refuse, Joe. When their systems crashed, Mina was the only person who could get them back on their feet. And Mina was with me. I told them, either you leave us in this rust and vanish in your own darkness, or you recognize the autonomy of the underworld and agree to provide us with raw materials and technology.
You literally blackmailed an entire city.
Let's call it diplomacy, Joe. We turned their lights back on, but we set the terms. That night, I didn't just end a war. I drew a border. There are no longer two separate worlds called above and below. Now, there are those who need us and us. I will not allow us to melt away just so they can live in luxury. What I held in my hand that day during the negotiation wasn't just a code. It was their entire future.
So Below City is no longer a junkyard. It's become a sort of independent kingdom, and you are the king, the one some hate, but everyone depends on.
No. You want a crown to be a king, Joe. I just wanted to stop my people from turning into dust. The scent of victory is sometimes just the smell of rust and burning. We won, but I still see the price of this victory every morning when I look in the mirror at this peeling yellow paint on my armor. As for Mina, she still lives with us down here, even though those above see her as a traitor. Because she saw the truth. The glitter of the above shines with the blood of the below.
Ares, after everything you've said, my view of the hundreds of armed men outside has changed. They aren't just bodyguards, they are the remnants of that scrap army you pulled out of the rust that night, aren't they? Today your word is law in Below City. Do you rule it like a mob boss, or still like a general?
People call what they fear the mob. I simply built my own scales in a place where justice never visited the courts of the above city. In the underworld, no one dies by rusting anymore. No one is melted down to become someone else's raw material. If that makes me a mob boss, so be it. I am the guardian of the darkness beneath those glittering towers.
But the above city still wants you. Coming to this studio today is a massive risk. Your location is known. Why are you here? Why today?
Because the clean masters in the above city have started to think the effects of Pandora have faded. They are eyeing our tunnels again, making cleaning plans again. I'm here because I wanted to remind them of something. This is a show of strength. I still smell of rust, and I am still very close to the button that can shut off their power. This isn't just a podcast, Joe. This is a memory-refreshing session.
Friends, today we didn't just listen to the memories of a robot. We listened to the fate of a city. Aries, I think calling you a villain or a hero is far too simple. You are the man who survived, and the man who had to sacrifice thousands of lives to make that survival possible.
People always expect clean heroes, Joe. Knights on white horses, glittering armor. But the truth is, sometimes you have to be the executioner to save someone. That night, when Mina told me, "Don't do it, they are innocent," I only asked her one thing. What about those below? Remember, Joe, you can't hand flowers to an executioner while he's strangling you.
That's all for today from Robot Memories. Take care of yourselves. Good night.